The t-distribution, called student's t-distribution, is a family of distributions that look almost identical to the normal distribution curve. It's a bit shorter and fatter than the normal. It's used instead of the normal distribution when you have small samples. The larger the sample size, the more the t-distribution looks like the normal distribution. A z-score and a t-score are both used in hypothesis testing. Generally, if you're taking elementary statistics, you'll use a z-score more often than you'll use a t-score, but in real life you're more likely to come across the t-distribution. There's a general rule of thumb for when you want to use the t-score. If your sample size is below 30, or if you have an unknown population standard deviation, you'll need to use the t-score. In order to use a z-score, you must know the standard deviation of the population, and your sample size should be above about 30. This diagram outlines the rule of thumb, but note it is a rule of thumb. There is a bit of a grey area, so you may want to refer to your textbook or ask your professor which one he would prefer you to use. This is a t-score formula. You'll use it to get a t-score for your test results. X bar is the sample mean, mu sub 0 the population mean, S is the sample standard deviation, and N is the number of items in your sample. Let's say you have some data on how much graduates earn. This is how you'd find the t-score. X bar is the sample mean, and that is given here as $280. Mu of 0 is the population mean. We're told graduates earn a mean of $300 per hour. That would be our population. S is the sample standard deviation. We're told that's $50. N is the number of items in the sample. That's 15. If I plug those numbers into the formula and solving that using a calculator, I get a t-score of minus 1.549. In a hypothesis test, you'll want something to compare that t-score to. In order to get the comparison figure, you need two pieces of information: the degrees of freedom, which is the number in the sample minus 1. You also need an alpha level. Alpha levels are usually given to you in the question. So you look up your degrees of freedom in the left side of the t-distribution table. You then locate the column under your alpha level. If you're not given an alpha level, the usual one you want to choose is 5%, that's 0.05. If you had 10 items in your sample at an alpha level of 5%, your degrees of freedom would be 10 minus 1, that's 9. Looking down the alpha level of 5%, we find our t-table value, which is 1.833.